rozgłośnie Polskiego Radia. Dziś rano o godzinie 5:40 oddziały niemieckie przekroczyły granicę polską, łamiąc pakt o nieagresji. Bombardowano szereg miast. Za chwilę usłyszą Państwo komunikat specjalny. A więc wojna.
I was born in November of 1939 in Warsaw, Poland. When I was born, the city was bombed. There was hardly any water. There was hardly anything to eat. And of course my mother had to take care of me, so I can imagine just how difficult it was for her to take care of me. I don't really have any memories about my father, but I am here maybe 3 or 4 years old, and I'm sitting on my father's lap, and he is looking at me in a loving way. My father inherited a piece of land in town of Pruszków, which was about 25-30 miles outside of Warsaw. And he inherited a plot of land from his brother that was tortured and murdered by the Gestapo. He decided to build a small cabin on this piece of land. And the cabin was almost completed when me and my mother moved there. My father was in the resistance. It's called Armia Krajowa. And he knew that there would be an uprising, and he wanted my mother and me to be safe. And that's why he moved us from Warsaw into that cabin. My mother was informed that my father was killed during the Warsaw Uprising in 1944, and I remember her, the sadness in her face, and the tears, and of course how my life and her has been different ever since. He was buried in a courtyard in one of the apartment buildings in Warsaw, and a small cross made just of plywood was put there with his name on it. Later, I do have a memory of my mother hiring a man to dig out that grave and move the body to the cemetery. My mother had to identify that actually it was my father's body, so after digging the coffin and bringing it up, the coffin was opened, and I remember my father's body, and there were some parts of his body that was covered with mold, and I remember that picture when I was probably about 5.5 years old. After the uprising failed, Germans decided to punish, and everybody was evacuated from the city, and the buildings were systematically burned one after another. So there was just nothing left. It was one big ruin. It's a picture here. Of course, I didn't have any toys to play with. There were no stores with toys, so we just had to play with what we could find. And here's a picture of me. I have a officer's belt on me, and to that belt is attached a German gas mask. And I have in my hand, I have a wooden box in which dynamite was kept, and then there's a can on the top, and there are some shells in that can. In my left hand I hold one of those shells. So these were my toys when I was that age. My mother befriended a very nice colleague of hers, and her name was Panna Kowalska, and she had extended family, and one of those family members was the family of Alfred and Wacława Szuliński, and they invited me there to spend a month during the summer. I was probably about 13 or 14 years old, and I had a wonderful time because I really have never been on a true operating farm. There was an elderly man, grandpa, who actually had very interesting history, and he would spend time with me, and I would ask him questions, and he would answer those questions. And he had the fortune of coming to America probably in the 1910 maybe, or 1915, I'm not really sure, and working here very hard like people did, saving some money and then coming back and buying the farm on which the Szuliński family was living. So I had very pleasant memories of him telling me about America and what it was like for him, and he was showing me lots of enthusiasm about being in this country, and probably that had influenced my decision later on to come here and seek my fate, so to speak. I do remember when I was a teenager that my mother mentioned that my father had the opportunity to go to Argentina, and that would have been before the beginning of the war. And I was always wondering how much that would made a change in my life, and how my life would have been different if they did go to Argentina, if they immigrated to Argentina before the war started.